Sound off with me, folks, on the Chicago Bulls beating the Boston Celtics at their own game. That is what happened Thursday night at TD Garden. Listen, we all know the Boston Celtics are built around the three-point line. That is the offense. And tonight, it just did not carry them through. It did, however, carry the Chicago Bulls through. Boston shot 50-plus three-pointers. Chicago shot 50-plus three-pointers. But only one team made them at a high rate. That was Chicago, made 37% of its three-pointers, while the Celtics made only 25% of its three-pointers, and that was the difference in this game. So the Celtics got beat at their own game. That does not happen very often. Okay, this is only the third time this season that the Celtics have made less than 30% of their three-pointers. So it's a rare instance where a team that is a great shooting team simply does not shoot the ball well as a unit. There are nights when some guys don't shoot the ball well. There are nights when other guys don't shoot the ball well. But very rarely is there a game for this Celtics team where basically everyone doesn't shoot the ball well. And that is what happened tonight, and that's what opened the door for Chicago to walk on through. And listen, the Celtics came out of the gates and they looked rusty. Like this is only their second game that they played in 11 days. That is thanks to the layoff here that happened because of the NBA Cup. And even in the last game, the Celtics did not look great out of the gates. The same can be said for the game rewinding back against the Detroit Pistons, the first game during that NBA Cup lull. They didn't look very good in the first quarter, but they figured it out the rest of the game. Tonight was just one of those nights where they didn't look good. They looked rusty. They looked completely out of rhythm at both ends of the court for much of the game, and in particularly during the fourth quarter when the going got tough and one team was going to pull away and the other team was going to suffer the L. And during this game, listen, there were only a couple of moments that were really kind of like positives that you can take away from this for the Boston Celtics. The first was in the first quarter. Jason Tatum looked great. His second consecutive game where he scored at least 11 points during the first quarter. He scored 12 during the opening frame. You're feeling good. As the Celtics team, as a Celtics fan, you got to feel good after that. You see your star player taking over during the first quarter, kind of setting the tone. You think, okay, maybe we're not playing our best as a unit right now, but it's going to fall in line because he's playing great. Then in the second quarter, it was all about Kristaps Porzingis. He scored 12 points during the second quarter, was dominating every mismatch that he got. I think he shot 4 of 6 from the field during that quarter. As I said, scored 12 points. So yet again, another guy playing well during the quarter. Not everyone else was, though, at the same time. You had one guy scoring at a high rate, but the rest of the team wasn't able to keep up. So again, you're just thinking in your mind, okay, Tatum did it during the first quarter. Porzingis did it during the second quarter. At some point, all of the other guys are going to click around them at the same time, and Boston's going to pull away. Never happened. And one of the reasons is because of Zach LaVine. Like, he was excellent tonight. Finished this game with, I believe, game high 36 points. He was excellent. 6 of 11 from three-point range, 11 of 19 from the field. He was great. He looked like vintage Zach LaVine tonight. Had that burst, had that athleticism. He made some incredibly difficult three-pointers, like step back, off the dribble, highly challenged shots that he just dropped through the net. So listen, at that point, you take your cap off, you tip it, and you say, Zach LaVine, you're playing at a higher level than basically all of the Celtics tonight. And that's simply put, that is what happened during this game. Zach LaVine was the best player on the court, no questions asked. So Zach LaVine was hot during the first half. That wound up keeping Chicago in this game. I think he had 22 points during the first quarter. So the Celtics, not putting it together as a unit, but had a couple individual performances that you thought was going to have them pull away. No, Zach LaVine kept Chicago in it. And then during the second half, he continued to play at a high level. Now, still, the Celtics had a shot to win this game. In the fourth quarter, this game was tight throughout, But then during the fourth quarter, I believe it was a 17-4 run or 17-3 run for Chicago to open the fourth quarter. That's when they started to gain some momentum. Yet here we are midway through the fourth quarter, and the Celtics still have a shot. They were down by 9, and then they rattled off 6 straight points. The first 3 off Derek White getting fouled on a three-pointer. Bang, 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 makes all three-pointers down to 6. Boston gets a stop. Then they have a beautiful possession on offense. Peyton Pritchard, the ball is swinging around the perimeter. Peyton Pritchard gets it on the right wing. He easily could have taken the three-pointer, but he gives one more pass into the right corner, and Jaylen Brown strokes a 3, swishes it home, cuts the deficit down to 3. So at that point, there's 5+ minutes left in the game. It's a 3-point game. Celtics just rattled off 6 straight. You're thinking, okay, here they come. They're finally catching their rhythm. And then they kind of lost their temper. Joe Mazzulla called for a technical foul, which he said after the game, it was called because he stepped onto the court. He owned it. He was on the court probably 5, 6, 7 feet onto the court during the stoppage when a foul was called. He was arguing the call, and he said he was called for a technical because he was on the court. Then, seconds later, Jaylen Brown also called for a technical foul. He said after the game the reason he was called for the tech is because he told the referee that he gave a technical foul to Joe Mazzulla for no reason. The ref told Jaylen, if you say it again, I'm going to give you a technical foul. And Jaylen apparently said it again. So there's 2 technical fouls. Chicago makes both of the free throws. So it goes from a 3-point game to a 5-point game. Then shortly thereafter, Jason Tatum called for a technical foul. All of these points matter. You're playing in a close game down the stretch in a game where you do not have your high-level A game on that night as a team. So every point matters. You're trying to squeeze out a win on a night when you don't have your best. Every point matters, and the Celtics gave away 3 of them during the fourth quarter, and that changed the energy in the building. Sometimes those techs can go in the other direction. Joe Mazzulla's talked about it. Sometimes he kind of begs for a technical because he wants to change the energy and inspire his team to make a run. Tonight, those 3 technicals did the Celtics in. It changed the vibe in the arena. Not to say that everyone felt great at that time, but they were feeling pretty good after those 6 straight points, and it's a 3-point game when the Celtics weren't playing great. But then you get those techs, you give away 2 points, then you give another one away later on, and it just felt uneasy in the arena. Like everyone knew those plays changed the game. So down the stretch, the Celtics just weren't able to make the plays. They lost their cool a little bit with those technical fouls, and they just weren't able to battle back and make it a game after that. However, I will say this, that Peyton Pritchard made a late 3-pointer with like 5 seconds left or something like that off a missed 3-pointer by Jordan Walsh. That 3-pointer brought the Celtics to within 9, which was the final margin, 117-108. So that, hey, glass half full, that prevented the Celtics from losing their first game of the season by double digits. So they still have not lost a game by double digits. The other number that I'll throw out there is that this was the first time all season that the Celtics lost a game by more than 6 points. So the first 5 losses of the season were all by 6 or fewer points. This is the first one that came by more than that. So, not to say that, that's not a victory, that's not a moral victory or anything like that, but if you can get through the whole season without losing by 10 or more points, you're a pretty good team. So let's see if the Celtics can continue that. All right, we're going to dive in. We've got 3 fans sounding off tonight after this loss. Jeff is first up on Boston's 3-point shooting, which was not pretty tonight. Then we've got Boston Sports Bros on their 10,000-foot view of this loss. And then lastly, we've got Charlie Gessner sounding off on the rematch that's scheduled for these 2 teams 48 hours from now out in Chicago. Let's dive into our first one here. This one's coming in from Jeff. All right, Jeff is first up with our first comment of the night. He says, I hate to say it, but their insistence on shooting the 3 did them in. They actually had the advantage in the paint most of the game, so that makes it even worse. The 2 games in 11 days probably didn't help either. Yet they were rusty. There's no doubt about it. You can't beat around the bush. That's not to say that they did anything wrong in the time off, but they just didn't have it tonight. They'll get their rhythm back. Not worried about that. Now let's talk about the three-pointers. Okay, so the Celtics take 56. The Bulls take 52. So the Celtics did what they always want to do. They want to take more threes. Chicago stayed close, though. Got to give them credit. And this is the variance game. Okay, Chicago's not known as one of the elite three-point shooting teams in the league, but tonight they were pretty darn good. If you take 50-plus three-pointers and you make 37% or better of them, you're going to have a really good shot of winning any game. Okay, that's what the Celtics want to do on a nightly basis. But tonight, they only made 25% of them. That's the Celtics. 14 for 56. Not a good night. However, I do want to comment on this because Jeff is saying that's what did them in. I've got two things. One, you got to trust yourself. You got to trust yourself that you're going to make them eventually. This is a team that has a track record of having players up and down the roster who can put the ball through the net at a pretty decent clip from long range. So that's number one. You got to trust in yourself and your skills. And by the way, they did attack the basket during the fourth quarter. I got to look it up here to see how many points in the paint they scored during the fourth, but it felt like it was a pretty decent clip. It was only 8 points in the paint. Not quite as many as Chicago was driving to the basket at will. The defense was kind of falling apart for Boston, but 8 points in the paint during the fourth quarter. It felt like Jason Tatum was getting to the rim when he got in, but the rest of the team was kind of settling from long distance. But again, if I'm the Celtics, I'm always going to trust in my skills. I'm going to trust in what the majority of my season has looked like. And that's a team that is one of the, if not the, most prolific three-point shooting team in the league. Steph Curry's not going to not shoot three-pointers at the end of a game because he shot poorly the first three quarters. He's going to keep shooting because that's what good shooters do. And the Celtics are a team of good shooters. So that's what they were doing. They were trusting in themselves. I understand it's frustrating when they don't go in. They did not go in tonight. However, you got to give them that leeway. That's what they do. Tonight, they lost while doing it. They just didn't shoot the ball well. The second thing that I will say about not shooting three-pointers is kind of what Jeff is getting to here. The Celtics got back into this game because they did take three-pointers. As I just mentioned, they were down by 9. Then they cut it to 6 when Derek White got fouled on a three-pointer. So that attempt from long range took 3 points off the board. And then they worked the ball around. As I said, Peyton Pritchard, one more pass over into the corner to Jaylen Brown, and he splashes at home and that makes it a three-point game. So the Celtics got back into this because of the three-point line. And who knows if they didn't commit those technical fouls, who knows what would have happened. It might have been what won them the game. So, the game has a lot of variance. Some nights, most nights the Celtics are going to be great. Few nights they're going to be below average or poor. Tonight they were below average or poor from long range. But you would think at some point they were going to snap out of it. They tried to. They almost did getting back into this game, but they didn't do it enough to be able to win this game. So, Jeff, we appreciate the comment. I totally understand where you're coming from on the insistence of shooting three-pointers. But again, if that's what you do, that's what you should always do. Don't get away from it. That's my perspective. I think that's the Celtics' perspective, and that definitely is Joe Mazzulla's perspective. All right, next up, Boston Sports Bros is sounding off on this loss with, as I said, a 10,000-foot view, and here it is. They laid an egg in the fourth quarter and lost composure with technicals. Bound to happen over the course of an 82-game season. Not concerned. All right, Boston Sports Bros, sounds like you're pretty level-headed here. I appreciate that. It doesn't happen much after losses. I mean, you can go into my post on X after this game, read through. There are a lot of comments that might seem like the world is melting and the world is burning down for the Boston Celtics. It's not. As Boston Sports Bros says here, a game like this is bound to happen over the course of 82 games. I just want to say, can we not feel privileged here as Celtics fans that this was the 27th game of the season, and this is the first time the Celtics have had, I guess you could term this as a clunker. They lost by 9. They lost by 9 points. It's not like they lost by 30. 25, yes, I give it to you. They didn't play very well. But if a 9-point loss is your clunker, you're living a pretty good life. Not only as the team and the players, but as a fan. Let's not act too privileged here, okay? The Celtics are human. These guys, they're all human on the team. As a unit, sometimes they're going to have nights where they don't play well. Tonight, they didn't play great. We all know that. They know that. And they lost because of it. They still somehow had a chance to win. They weren't able to pull it out. But, I mean, you're 27 games in and you still haven't lost by 10 or more points. That's pretty crazy. I haven't looked around the league, but I'd be surprised if more than one or two other teams have accomplished that at this point. So, pretty impressive from the Celtics to even have a chance to win this game when they didn't play well. But to Boston Sports Bros' point here, this is 1 of 82. It's bound to happen at some point in the season that the Celtics just don't play very well and lose. And they only lost by 9. It's not that bad, I promise. All right, last up, our comment of the night is from Charlie Gessner. And here it is. Charlie says, a lot of rust, poor defense, and a red-hot LaVine. You don't show up, you don't win. Friday night in Chicago, it's Saturday night in Chicago. Should be very interesting. Those T's didn't help down the stretch either. All right, let's go one by one here. A lot of rust, we've already talked about that. The Celtics have not played a lot of games here over the last couple of weeks, and I think you could see it. There was some rust in there. Jason Tatum came back in the last game against Washington, hadn't played in a week. Al Horford came back tonight, hadn't played in a week. The team in general has only played a few games over the course of 14 or so days. So there's not been a lot of actual basketball games happening for this team, and they looked rusty. Can't beat around the bush. They looked rusty tonight. Poor defense. I will counter that slightly with what Joe Mazzulla said after the game. He thought that they played very good defense during the first half, but it was the second half where things got away. He said that the Boston's misses on offense seemed to take away some of their effectiveness, effort, ability to slow the Bulls down at the other end. So those misses for the Celtics at one end kind of infected the defense at the other end. You can't allow that to happen consistently throughout the season. Celtics have been pretty good defensively. I wouldn't say elite so far this season, but you cannot allow that type of trend to continue where the offense affects the defense. So let's keep an eye out for that as we move forward. Red hot LaVine, absolutely. He was the best player on the court tonight. There's no question about that. This is a guy who's made all-star teams. He's an excellent player. He's a player that much of the league might be looking around and saying that's a guy that we would like to have on our side right now. Zach LaVine is talented. He can take over a game, and that's what he did tonight. He did it from inside. He did it from outside. Just a great performance from Zach LaVine. Next up, next comment, you don't show up, you don't win. Yeah. Okay, Chicago, I said this earlier in the week to some people here in the office talking about these games coming up for the Celtics. I said, Chicago has talent. Now, that team doesn't necessarily match up very well against the Celtics, I don't think. Like, if they matched up in a playoff series, I don't think it's a great matchup for Chicago. But Chicago has talent on that team. Zach LaVine, Nikola Vucevic, like, you've got high-end talent on that team. Kobe White, Patrick Williams, these are players who I think a lot of teams around the league would like to have as one-off players on their roster. Tonight they put it together. They played well as a unit while the Celtics did not. So this is the NBA. Unless you're playing against the very bottom of the league, which the Bulls are not, by the way. They're hovering around 500 this season. It's not as bad as you might think out there in Chicago for the Bulls. They've been pretty solid team so far this season, but this is the NBA. So unless you're playing the bottom feeders of the league, if you don't play well, you've got a very high probability of losing a game. Tonight, that happened for the Celtics. They didn't play well. Chicago, which does have talent, did play well, and Chicago wound up winning. So the next comment and the last one we're going to touch on here, Saturday night in Chicago should be very interesting. Yes, it should, because these two teams are going to match up yet again Saturday night out in Chicago. It is a rematch, and something tells me the Boston Celtics are going to want to clean up what they did tonight. Joe Mazzulla said it after the game. 15 or 20 possessions is what they need to find and what they need to clean up and turn around and push it in the other direction in order for them to come out on top in the next game Saturday night. They are going to be motivated, and they are going to want to get back into the win column. So, listen, I said to someone next to me, I said, in the media section at the end of the game, I said, I wouldn't be surprised if the Celtics walk into the United Center out there in Chicago and they wind up with a pretty dominant win on Saturday night. They're going to be starving for it after this game. They did not play well. This was their worst game of the season, and they are going to want to clean it up and turn the table back in the other direction Saturday night in Chicago. So after that game, we will have another episode of Sound Off. It will only be the audio version because it is an away game. But I appreciate you guys listening tonight, watching tonight. After the game Saturday, please check out my post on social, on X. Respond with your thoughts, your feelings. I'm going to pick a few, and I'll have them in the next episode of Sound Off with the Boston Celtics. So again, thanks for listening. I appreciate you being a part of this, and look forward to talking to you again Saturday night.